So this week's Dynamite kicked off with Kenny Omega versus Matt Sydal in an AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament, where basically if Matt Sydal wins, he gets a future World Championship match against Kenny Omega. I honestly thought that Jon Moxley would probably interfere in this match and cost Kenny Omega the victory and force him to have a World Championship match against Matt Sydal in the future, just because of what Omega and the Good Brothers did to him last week, but it didn't happen. Omega ends the match by hitting a one-winged angel and pins Sydal. So next we had Hangman Adam Page versus Cesar Bononi. And not a whole lot to say about this match. Adam Page takes out Bononi with the buckshot lariat and pins him. At this point, I can only imagine they're probably building him up for a championship match of some type, which is fine to me because I feel like he's one of the best wrestlers they have in AEW and definitely deserves a championship reign. Then we had Lance Archer hyping a match between him and Sting, which I'm honestly pretty excited for because the idea of a legend like Sting going up against a monster like Lance Archer is honestly super interesting to me. And then after that, we had Tony Schiavone coming out to interview Dr. Britt Baker. Basically, she hyped up the match she had last week and talked about how good she was, which is honestly true. And I really hope this does lead to maybe a AEW Women's World Championship match at some point because I definitely think Britt deserves it. So then we have an interview with Christian Cage, which basically ends with Christian announcing that he'll make his AEW in-ring debut next week against Frankie Kazarian. So that should be pretty interesting, seeing how Christian performs in-ring in AEW. Then we had a six-man tag team match. The Pinnacles, FTR, and Shawn Spears faced off against the Varsity Blondes and Dante Martin. And of course, this is the Pinnacles' first match as a team, so obviously they have to beat the Varsity Blondes and Dante. And then MJF gets on a mic and challenges Chris Jericho to a battle between their two groups. Then we had a backstage promo by Team Taz, which progressed the storyline of Brian Cage possibly leaving Team Taz in the future, which I honestly don't get the point of because I honestly like that team the way it is with all the big guys like Will Hobbs. And, you also got Ricky Starks too, but whatever. So then we have a segment between Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall, and QT says he wants to step out of Cody's shadow, and he says the only way they can do that is to have an exhibition match next week. So we'll see what happens to the future of the Nightmare family next week. I honestly kind of hope that QT just turns heel and just goes on an absolute tear, but that might just be wishful thinking. So then we had a six-man tag team match, which was pretty much a repeat from 2019's Fyter Fest when the Young Bucks teamed up with Kenny Omega to take on the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid, but this time they chose Brandon Cutler. Anyways, Laredo Kid pins Cutler to score the pin, and then Kenny Omega came out and attacked Laredo Kid and said that this time you chose Brandon Cutler, and Kenny said that 3 years ago he had a choice to either stay in New Japan at home with all the fans that loved him, but instead he chose the Young Bucks so that they can make AEW the greatest wrestling promotion on the planet, and that no matter how many times he chooses them, they never choose him back. Because this time, instead of sitting with the cool kids in the cafeteria, they chose Brandon Cutler. And he offers them one last chance to throw up the too sweet. The Young Bucks refuse, and Kenny Omega says that they're done. So I guess at this point, the Elite is completely disbanded. Adam Page is out. Omega and the Bucks are no longer together. So that is that. Then we get a teaser for the new reality show featuring the Rhodes family entitled Rhodes to the Top. And honestly, I am not a fan. I was really hoping they would not go the WWE route and make like a million reality TV shows, but it looks like they're headed in that direction. We had a promo from Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston next, where Jon Moxley pretty much said that he owed the Young Bucks for saving him last week. Then we had Nyla Rose with Vicky Guerrero versus Ty Conti, and honestly, this is where I have to praise Ty Conti because I think she's actually getting so much better. And even when she was in NXT, I honestly thought she was one of the most underrated wrestlers there. So it's really nice to see now that she's the #1 contender and possibly headed towards an AEW Women's World Championship match. One thing I didn't like though was at the end when Matt Hardy came out with his new group, because you guys all know if you watched last week's review that I am not a fan of how many groups are being introduced. It seriously feels like every single freaking person is now in a group to the point where I don't even remember the groups that some people were in because they just keep switching between them so frequently. Like I hardly even remember Eddie Kingston being with the Lucha Brothers at one point when he was actually feuding with Jon Moxley. It's just too much. I honestly don't care anymore that this is like the 20th group I've seen in AEW. Then it was announced that next week there would be an Arcade Anarchy match with Miro and Kip Sapien taking on Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy. And to be honest, I'm surprised this feud is still going on because I'm pretty sure it was going on from like the moment Miro debuted in AEW, and I'm honestly just tired at this point. If this is what it takes to end this feud, I don't care. It sounds big and stupid enough to be the conclusion to this feud, so let's just get it over with. And finally, we got to the main event, which was a TNT Championship match between the champion Darby Allin and the challenger John Silver of the Dark Order. And they battle it out. John Silver goes for the late Brody Lee's signature powerbomb, but Darby counters into a code red for the victory. And then all of a sudden, Matt Hardy and his group come out and start brawling with Darby, Sting, and the Dark Order, so I can only imagine this is going to lead to a big tag team match next week. So overall, just a usual progression of the storylines and just an average show.